Good morning and welcome to Tulane University. It is my pleasure to introduce our first session, Optimizing End-of-Life Well Management in Louisiana, moderated by Monique Edwards, the former Louisiana Commissioner of Conservation.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
All right, our first panelist, we have Mr. Adam Peltz, Director and Senior Attorney for the Environmental Defense Fund. Adam. Ms. Kelisha Garrett, Chief Operating Officer and Vice President, Louisiana Chamber of Commerce Foundation.
Good morning.
And Ms. Megan Biven, Founder, True Transition, and she is a Louisiana girl living it up in Vienna. The law of physics tells us for every action there's an equal and opposite reaction. Put another way, balance in any arena allows for harmony and the protection of the public's health, safety, and welfare. This has been and will continue to be my philosophy. It is a challenge to achieve, but having a decent quality of life for all stakeholders is paramount because man cannot control where the wind blows or the water flows. The Office of Conservation allowed operators not to plug wells if they were for future utility, and there was no fee for that designation. As commissioner, I removed that designation. Wells were either active or inactive, in which case a fee was assessed. The option was then either plug the well or pay the fee. The change caused operators to look at their operations realistically and produce a solution that protected the public. Balanced regulations are good for the public and industry because you avoid bad press when unforeseen events occur. So let's dive into the orphan well challenge. Adam, what are orphan wells and why should we care about this issue?
Great. Thank you, Commissioner Edwards. So orphaned oil and gas wells are wells that have reached the end of their life, are not productive, and have, instead of being properly plugged and remediated, which means putting cement down the hole to make sure there isn't fluid flow between layers, the operator has walked away in some fashion. And the wells are unplugged, and the responsibility to plug them falls on the public. Across the United States, there's probably 1 million of these wells. There's around 140,000 of them have been documented. In Louisiana, that population is around 4,000 to 4,500. And then on top of that, and there's a slide up, you can see that in addition to the 4,000 or 4,500 orphan wells, there's another almost 20,000 idle wells. It's basically the same, except there's still theoretically a solvent owner. Have they put up enough money to plug those wells? Probably not. So you're looking at tens of thousands of more likely future orphan wells. The expected cost to the state of Louisiana, to the taxpayer, to deal with these is $500 million for the existing wells, and you can multiply that by 4 or 5 for the idle wells. So this is a huge, troubling legacy of energy production here. You know, the conversation thus far at this conference has been around energy futures, and that's great. Let's see what we did in the past and where things have gone wrong so we don't repeat those problems. And in particular, a lot of the clean energy solutions we've been talking about require having a lockdown geology with integrity. If we have all these holes in the ground, we can't do the things we want to do, like carbon capture and that sort of thing. So having a successful clean energy future requires dealing with the dirty energy past. And it's not just about facilitating future energy production. It's about groundwater contamination, air toxics, methane emissions, reduction in property values, and an unplugged well is an unpaid oil field service worker. So we're leaving a lot of jobs on the table with this too.
Thank you, Adam. Megan, how do unplugged wells and related infrastructure impact Louisiana's $50 billion coastal master plan?
Thanks for asking that. So as folks know, Louisiana is facing an existential coastal erosion issue. And in the way of those projects include many of these unplugged wells, but in addition to pipelines and pipeline canals and about 1,100 remaining structures in the coastal plain. There's a image we have from SkyTruth. And for every project that is deployed by the CPRA, there could be a snake's nest of pipelines that need to be removed, canals that need to be filled in, wells that need to be plugged, and topsides removed. And if we want to make sure that this state master plan is implemented efficiently and successfully, we have to get all of this material out of the way. And extending into federal waters, this is an issue as well. I know this extends beyond the state conversation, but we have about 18,000 miles of decommissioned in-place pipelines that are in the way of sand that could be used for coastal restoration projects as well. And so, as Adam said earlier, if we want to pursue our future, we have to contend with our past.
Thank you, Megan. Kelisha, how does the all-well capping and abatement program in Louisiana create meaningful opportunities for local and minority-owned businesses, especially contractors from alternative industries like construction, environmental remediation, and landscaping, to contribute their services in the process of capping orphan wells and restoring these sites to their natural state?
Thank you, Commissioner. As Megan and Adam both stated, the importance around the economic impact of returning our land back to its prior formation is inclusive of having these things removed. When there is access, awareness of opportunity, and awards that are provided to our local business community that includes those individuals that may have traditional construction backgrounds or may have traditional engineering, architectural, even mortgage and conveyance. There's so many different industries that go into the service when you are actively going through the process. There is access to title, there is community engagement, there is going into the community and then providing them with a timeline and process of how this is going to impact their daily lives, but also how it's going to return the environment back to its former presence. And so with that, we want to make sure that these opportunities are available to individuals that look like the community in which they inhabit. Most often, these wells were placed in underserved communities, rural communities, individual locations that were far away from your major metropolitan areas. And so out of sight, out of mind cannot be the way that we move forward with including our community, those businesses, those owners, those entrepreneurs, and even those individuals that work in a skilled labor workforce that have transferable skills like welding, or individuals that drive forklifts, or individuals that can remove debris, or landscaping, planting, getting back to what nature once had prior to that well being placed. And so what we want to do is to work with those organizations that are working with the Department of Natural Resources, that are working with the Department of Energy, that are coming down into Louisiana and providing us with the energy way to the future, but including our community so that that economic impact can interface with every aspect of what it takes to remediate, cap, remove, and return that environment.
Thank you. Megan, we'll start with you. Since you worked on the orphan well issue in federal waters during your time with BOEM, do you have any lessons learned that could help Louisiana chip away at its own inventory?
Absolutely. So one program that the Bureau of Safety and Environmental Enforcement has right now is the Idle Iron program. It keeps track of platforms that are in federal waters that are past their decommissioning date. And and puts them on the clock to decommission within a time frame. And as you can see with that image on the side, that is not currently the case in the state of Louisiana. There are structures that are in bayous and bays in the 3 nautical mile limit in Louisiana that are a hazard. They get damaged each subsequent hurricane season. And, you know, while they are adorable with their little wonky crane, they are not, they serve no use. And it's time for them to be moved because they foreclose the possibility of other constructive uses like sand for coastal restoration, like offshore wind in state waters. Another thing that the Bureau of Ocean Energy Management does and the federal government does is goes after predecessor lessors. So every lessee that is on the Outer Continental Shelf is jointly and severally liable for those wells. So a large company could operate that well to the economic limit and then sell off to a smaller, less well-capitalized firm. In the state of Louisiana, that is also true, just like in every oil and gas producing province on this planet. We do have predecessor liability to an extent when the cost to decommission a well is at $250,000 or above. DENR has authority to go after predecessor lessees, but I would say it is time to lower that threshold. And whatever that amount is spent, go after those predecessor lessees.
Thank you. Adam, what can be done in Louisiana to reduce future well burden?
Great, thank you. So Megan just mentioned several possible policy reforms, and the fact is that you can't solve this problem through innovation alone. You actually do need policy and regulation. You know, innovation's great, but if you don't have regulation, people are going to do what they want and not care about the impacts of what they do, and that's not good for society. And so more aggressive predecessor liability is certainly one avenue. Louisiana is actually one of only very few states that have that for onshore oil and gas production. Another thing that can be done is put some kind of financial assurance on the wells so that if the operator walks away, the state can be made whole through a bond or a letter of credit or some other kind of financial instrument. Something like 75% of wells in Louisiana are now covered by financial assurance. That number used to be lower. In every other state, it's 100%, so that's one thing. But there's only pennies on the dollar, 3 cents maybe per. There's 3% of the total closure cost is held in bonds. You don't necessarily need 100%, but you certainly can't get by on 3%, and we've seen that empirically with all the wells that we've ended up. And so you need to increase financial assurance. You have to do it in a way that doesn't put people out of business right away, because then you create more orphan wells, and that's not what we want, right? We want, you know, prosperity for everyone, but a clean environment also. And so you can increase financial assurance over time. You can require full cost financial assurance for new wells. You can require, as Arkansas has since 2018, full cost financial assurance for marginal wells on transfer, which is a way to, marginal wells are low producing wells, which is most wells. And so when they get transferred, and this is how wells get orphaned. Exxon doesn't orphan wells. Exxon is a going concern. Large companies sell their wells to increasingly small companies, and those are the companies that usually disappear or go bankrupt. And so if you require, when the wells are transferred down the value chain, that you put full financial assurance in place for them, you take them out of the risk pool. And the rule that Commissioner Edwards helped bring into being on idle well management is also really important. We can't let these things sit around forever. They're going to pollute. The people will disappear. If you're going to let them be around for a while, you need to make sure that they have full cost financial assurance. And you need to test them regularly to make sure they're not leaking. Other states are doing this. Utah is about to eliminate blanket bonds for everyone. Okay, you don't need to say you can give us 3 cents and that'll be okay. Other states have realized this is a problem, and a legislative audit that just finished this past month has a lot of great suggestions. A legislative audit here. It's the third in a series, and it has a lot of great suggestions for what DENR can do to reduce future orphan well burden and save Louisiana taxpayers money. The agency has indicated it's interested in pursuing some of these things. and we look forward to working with DENR on how to make that work well in Louisiana.
Thank you. Kelisha, could you outline the types of subcontractor opportunities available for local certified and minority-owned businesses within the Louisiana Department of Energy and Natural Resources All Remediation and Restoration Program?
Yes, certainly. So one of the things that we noticed that was different when the Department of Natural Resources put out the RFP to identify businesses to respond and bid on a project was that they were very inclusive of ensuring that we utilize the local talent that was here in Louisiana, and was more so concerned with ensuring that we had woman-owned, veteran-owned, certified businesses that have been through other types of diverse certification programs to be included in a pool of businesses that can participate. And so with that, they reached out to our organization, we reached out through community and identified some of the bid package requirements. And so typically when bidders are responding to these opportunities, they will identify portions of work within the project that we have ready, willing, and capable business industry leaders here in the pool to be able to participate in that response. And so in doing so, we were able to work with one of the contract teams that was awarded with Lemoyne and actually define what were those opportunities that were outside of things that may have had a requirement for a mechanical device that needs to be used, whereas we can then utilize those businesses in different services. And so some of them I mentioned earlier, but as you think about the entire process of what it takes to remove the equipment, unearth it from the ground, and then to return it back to its prior being. And so understanding title filings that you have to do, GIS surveys, site testing, from the labor side, welding, understanding lighting, bulldozing, landscaping, removing debris, even to the extent of logistics and marketing and communications with the community. All of these industries respectively were able to participate in this type of opportunity. Normally, when this type of bid goes out, most of these organizations are not even looking at this as an opportunity because they see it as removing the well from the earth, and oh, that's not the line of business that I'm in. What we did find were that there were many individuals that did not really understand that, yes, you have to go out and clear the path to these wells. Those that we started with in Oil City, which is North Shreveport area, they were in heavily wooded areas or located in the front yard of a residence, but with overgrown grass, right? So we needed someone to go in to chart that path. You have to remove the trees. You literally have to make way for an 18-wheeler with a bed to go out. There's then a oil pumping and a water pumping truck. So people that had worked on prior oil spills, had worked on with the roll and boom and had a water truck, they were able to come out and subcontract, so second and third tier contracting opportunities to remove those ingredients and to make the land prepped to be replaced. And then of course removing the hardware, looking at what we were doing with recycling, making sure that the debris that was removed and having a place for it to go. Again, notifying the individual residents if there were traffic delays, if there were safety concerns. Those are all opportunities within this industry that everyday contractors and business owners may do respectively for their other clients, and they don't really think through the process points. And so we were happy to partner with Lemoyne on this project and have subsequently been engaged in conversation with our Louisiana DNR office on future opportunities in energy and sustainability and what we can do for our environment, but making sure that business and industry that perform respectively in their areas know that these things are available and that it then impacts their employees, which impacts their community. It impacts our state as a whole with revenue and tax dollars and job creation. It is a win-win for us to participate in these types of industries and understand what that impact can do for our communities.
Thank you. Megan, what are some policies that Louisiana could enact to prevent wells from arriving on the public doorstep?
Well, Adam just mentioned the latest legislative audit, which I highly recommend that you check out. It has some really good recommendations. One of those is the oil site restoration trust fund, which I think up until recently had a $4 million cap. There's a severance tax that goes to operators in the state of Louisiana, and once they reach that $4 million point, they stop collecting, which creates an arbitrary limit on how many wells the state can plug in any given year. And so the auditor's report says, hey, remove that cap. And that's just dealing with the existing inventory. For future wells, Adam spoke a lot about financial assurance. And, for different types of categories of wells, you're going to have a different type of policy solution. So for a new well, what I have recommended is that you need, we talk about bonding, but I think that cash on hand is better than an IOU. And what we could do is what the nuclear industry does, where they require for an individual site to have a site-specific trust fund, which the state of Louisiana has, and the state can hold that in trust. And the operator can either vest that completely at the beginning of production, or it can opt to have a monthly fee that it pays in addition to a bond. So it kind of functions like mortgage insurance. So you pay your mortgage insurance, and as you vest more in the mortgage, the amount that you pay in the financial assurance, the additional bonding would go down. So that's for new wells. For marginal and inactive and idled wells, we just have to hit the timeline on when those have to be plugged. And like I said, with the trust fund, it's either the industry pays for this infrastructure or the general public pays. And so we're going to need a large severance tax going across the solvent operators to help kind of pay for that existing inventory. And so there's just some policy ideas that we have. Yeah.
Got you. Adam, you work with EDF very intensely along with the Interstate Oil and Gas Compact Commission. What are some of the things that you are working on in those two organizations to help give guidance to states in general, Louisiana in particular, as it relates to moving forward with orphan wells?
Great. So at the Environmental Defense Fund, it's a global organization, and so we have perspective on what a whole bunch of different jurisdictions are doing on these issues. There's around 25 or 30 states that produce oil and gas. They're all a little bit different in their histories and their operator makeup and their social and political contexts, and there's not going to be a one-size-fits-all solution for everyone. And this issue in particular is a state-level issue. And so what we can do at the Environmental Defense Fund is compile what different states are doing. We have a lot of economists who can model what is likely to happen under business as usual and how might different policy interventions affect orphan well populations, job creation, and that sort of thing. And so we can do that work and publish it and get it out into the world. And then at the Interstate Oil and Gas Compact Commission, which is the association of state oil and gas regulators, it's been around since the 1930s. Louisiana is a longtime member, although doesn't attend as much as it should, aside from Commissioner Edwards, who was and is a regular attendee. And that's a venue where the states can talk amongst themselves about what are we doing, what works and doesn't work. They really do have those conversations. That is the point of that organization, and it's happening that way. They do model statutes and provide roundups of what different jurisdictions are doing to make that available to other jurisdictions. And in fact, Arkansas innovations, Utah innovations, probably Texas innovations. They're planning on doing legislation on idle wells this coming session. All of those are those are potential inputs for what Louisiana is going to do. I think that this audit that just came out is a really, really good roadmap. It's very clear-eyed about the problem and about specific solutions that would fix it. I understand that there's a new agency here, the Natural Resource Trust Authority. Does that sound familiar? That is kind of just coming into being and is aware of past problems, is aware of this audit, and now has the opportunity to make a bunch of changes. And so I think that EDF, many other organizations, and IOGCC can all help brainstorm what's going to work in Louisiana, what's going to make sense here, and is actually practical to implement.
And what you're speaking about, Adam, is that this past legislative session, the governor and the secretary of the Department of Energy and Natural Resources has done a game plan, because in times past, after the 1974 Constitution, the Department of Conservation became a part of the Department of Natural Resources, and there was a Chinese wall created that said the Commissioner of Conservation would have autonomy except in budget and administrative matters. In the last session, that wall was taken down because the public, people would still want to speak to the department secretary, only to be told I can't step into those regulatory decisions. So part of that reorg was to take away the Chinese wall, and I've been asked whether or not I thought that was a good thing, and the answer is yes. I think when you look at Louisiana's role in energy, just in general, but particularly as we see the transformation occurring, Louisiana is probably the only state in the union that has all of the components for the transformation. So I just want you to sit with that. That's a huge thing.
I would love Louisiana to lead the way. Why not?
Absolutely.
Right. So, and we have a governor who wants us to lead, and so when you decide you want to lead, you're going to have to take on some other kinds of responsibilities, and Orphan Wells is probably one of the biggest ones, because as you hear about carbon sequestration, you can't have Orphan Wells not being plugged, because then you add to the safety issue. So
yes, DENR is really worried about these wells, and in particular about undocumented orphan wells, which are ones that we don't even know about and where they are. And if you try to pressure up the geology with CO2, you're going to get geysers of terrible chemicals. And that's not good for the industry. And everyone in the industry knows that. And so there's even work to do here with flying drones with magnetometers to look for hidden wells. I mean, it's a big and serious problem, and it can't be ignored.
Right. Megan, do we plug and are we done? Or is there a forever issue?
So we have a report on our website, truetransition.org/M. It's our latest methane report. And one issue we talk about are wells that were plugged prior to 1954 and the likelihood of them having failed. And there's a percentage of wells in the state right now that are plugged, but they might have been plugged with a creosote-soaked telephone pole, which was common during World War II. But additionally, wells even plugged as recently as the early aughts could have failed for a variety of reasons. And this is something that I think citizens, industry, and government needs to acknowledge and accept, is that this will be a forever issue. We can go out and plug these wells, and there's the 20,000 marginal wells, but there's about 65,000 unplugged wells in Louisiana. There's I think total 250,000 wells that have been plugged in the history. There's the undocumented wells. That's a lot of work forever to do. So it is both a challenge and an opportunity. But yeah, we're going to be dealing with these things for the foreseeable future.
All right. Kelisha, to help train and prepare the workforce for job opportunities, what are some transferable skills or specific qualifications needed to work in the orphan well remediation program? And how can interested individuals get involved?
Great question. And so, as I stated earlier, many of the types of job performance that's needed there are actual task and technical certificates that are offered by our Louisiana college and technical systems. So with Delgado, with Nunez, Baton Rouge Community College, Delta Community College, many of these offer certificate programs that can provide an industry-based credential, which is usually a short-term certificate program that may be 8 weeks, 12 weeks, 26 weeks, whereas they can learn pipe fitting and welding. They can also learn drone operation and get a certificate to fly that drone. They can go through real estate classes so that they can understand registering titles and mortgages and conveyances. We have the marketing industries, as I stated earlier, communications. All of these general degrees can transfer into this industry. Now, there are more specified technical aspects that are needed that would be operational for the machinery that is actually used to remove the wells. From a labor task force, a skilled workforce task related job performance area, these types of certificates are offered generally throughout our community colleges, our technical colleges, and more so with some of the contractors that are utilized to provide these services. They have in-house training and will take in interns and have them go through an apprenticeship type program so that they can get a certificate and be able to participate in this opportunity. I do also want to take this opportunity to actually share, as Commissioner Edwards alluded to, that this administration is moving forward with a keen visibility and vision on how we can reduce inefficiencies and start to be a leader yet again in energy. And so I do sit as a commissioner for the Natural Resources Committee, and we just recently provided Governor Landry with an updated overview of our thoughts on the organizational structure of LDNR's office. And so removing duplicity, making compliance and regulations very well of a level of importance that places it to where we have subject matter experts and individuals that are experienced in what is asked about as it relates to land and permits and what is needed to move Louisiana forward. That is outlined. It can be found on the governor's website, and there is a community and an open meeting to review that again, but definitely want you guys to know that the administration is dedicated to moving forward in ways that we reduce these inefficiencies and make a quality of life that all Louisianans can thrive and prosper from, but more so having an economic impact to those individuals that can contribute.
Thank you. Do we have any questions?
Yes, we do.
Okay.
Okay, here's the first question. Most orphan wells come from bankruptcy. In the bankruptcy process, shareholders and creditors compete for the remaining assets of the company. Is there an entity that represents the state in bankruptcy hearings to ensure that some portion of the assets are held back to abandon the wells? If not, should there be?
Yes, the state attorney general's office has a gentleman by the name of Christopher Lento, who represents the state's interest in all of those bankruptcy filings. Most of them have been in the Eastern District of Texas. And the bankruptcy judge that was most familiar with what was happening in Louisiana unexpectedly resigned. And so that was a significant blow to the state because the state no longer has someone who was proactive in protecting the interests of the state. So that's where we are.
With all due respect to Texas, they took a lot of the economic benefit of oil and gas production and left Louisiana with a lot of the liability.
One final question. Has the state of Louisiana determined if there are enough qualified contractors located in the state to provide the total removal and remediation scope of work needed for currently identified orphaned wells?
So they actually, we do need more contractors. There, for the type of specific equipment that is utilized to remove the existing well, it is very specialized equipment. And so the bonding capacity for the prime that responds is significant, specifically because you are moving the earth, and there are implications of what can happen and liabilities that are there. So there is an opportunity for organizations that are interested in participating in this type of contracting perspective to build their businesses and start understanding how the different types of opportunities that are there and what is needed in order to participate. The best way forward is to look at the existing contract and scope. Many of these things are available public record because they are federal dollars that are coming down into the state of Louisiana. And so they do identify what is required from the bidder or proposer so that they can describe what they will do to provide the service that is identified in the proposal request. That can then let you know the types of industry-specific certifications that are needed and the types of materials and equipment for different aspects of the contract. But yes, this is a huge opportunity for entrepreneurs, for existing businesses that may see their current clientele declining, maybe due to market transition, and having this become an opportunity for them to regain and even grow and expand their business offerings. As Adam and Megan and Commissioner shared, this problem is not going away. There are thousands of wells that need to be addressed, and there will always be future opportunities to participate in this industry market. So I encourage those individuals that are interested to go to the Department of Natural Resources website, to look at the Department of Energy, look at those NOFAs that are coming out from the federal government, because they clearly define the types of opportunities that are available in ways that even our college students can get involved and understand how they too can take part in this industry moving forward.
Thank you. Would you give our panelists a round of applause?
Good job, yes.
And I think we're now back on schedule. Okay. Thank you. We finished.
All right.
Yeah.